How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur. After the confinement due to the pandemic of the COVID-19, people of Lebanon are taking back to the streets to protest against the economic crisis. What does the new government do after Sarah Harir has withdrawn? What is the reaction of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund? How does the myriad of religions see all this? Let's analyze this. According to news media, at the end of April, thousands of people have concentrated in the cities of Lebanon because there has been protests during the last days after the situation was calm due to the social isolation caused by the pandemic. Let's listen to statements of everywhere to why are they retaking the protests? The parliamentary session has generated 66 articles, but none of which are talking about what is really happening in Lebanon. They're striving for an amnesty law, a general amnesty, and we want to know amnesty for whom? What we need are economic solutions. We need an economic plan. We need laws to reform the system. This is what we need. We are in a crisis, and we need to know what the government is doing. We are here to say that the revolution is ongoing. It will not die. It will continue everywhere in Lebanon to confront the problems. They're taking the coronavirus as a pretext. We are taking back to the streets and stronger than ever. Due to the coronavirus, we suspended the movement, but the political authority kept on making decisions where now the currency exchange was 4,500 currency. So this is why we're outside of the central bank that represents the people. It represents 1% of those who make decisions and suck the blood of the poor. We are putting pressure on the politicians, and we don't know where the revolution is going. But the revolution right now is spontaneous. We need better life conditions. They don't listen to us, but they will. The condition will not slow down. To get out of this dark tunnel is the responsibility of everybody. The need of help to the International Monetary Fund is an obligatory way if we negotiate well and we fulfill all of the plans that our country are asking without foreign demands or mandates. We will put an end of the foreign income. We will protect the money of those who are saving in our system. Thus, we will be able to help the low-life people of Lebanon. There is a dilemma due to an ambiguity. First, you have the central bank in terms of the decrease of the value of the lira. And this has a dark impact on all of sectors of Lebanon. And there has been in $7,000 ever since the beginning, even $3 billion in the last week. The importance of the decision that we have taken with the president of the country to assign a neutral company to audit the Central Bank of Lebanon. This is a compromise with transparency, and so we can put an end to the breach. We will not allow and we will not tolerate that there's any speculation and try to collapse the country just to protect themselves, their interests, but while affecting the people of Lebanon. Before continuing, let's locate in the geopolitical map the country that we are focused on today. Lebanon, scenario of social protests. This is a country in the Orient with 10,400 square kilometers. On the east, it's on the west on the Mediterranean Sea, and the south with Israel, north and east Syria. The capital is Beirut. While being at the middle of the country, it's a strategic place with no competition. It's surrounded by mountains, and at its feet you have the Mediterranean Sea. This is why Beirut is the main port of the country. Lebanon has one of the highest human index. It's the 7th one in the Arab world. So people are located all throughout the coast. In the economic, we can say that there is 850 billion square barrels of oil. If these estimations are correct, the country could make $100 million of barrels. The sales of the gas, they could fulfill and pay off their foreign debt. Let's go through what the social economic measures are about. Let's see additionally what has been the result of these policies. After Saad Hariri had withdrawn from the presidency in 2019, in a context of social protest, after 3 months of a political blockade, the new president was able to make a new government. The new president has sworn that it's going to be a political transition time. And now, in the midst of the COVID-19, the protests have come back. This time because of the approval of what the Lebanese government has so-called a plan of economic rescue. It was approved by unanimity, and what they're going to do is ask for a loan to the International Monetary Fund. Likewise, they're going to unblock some money from the international community. In exchange, the government will apply certain reforms. According to the Prime Minister, these regulations are aimed at taking the government out of the worst crisis that they're living and ensure that they will be able to. Let's start with the lady. I know that you have last-minute information. Thank you very much for being with us. So this Wednesday, there was a meeting that was called by the president. Give us some information on what happened. In fact, this meeting that happened, that was able to be held, and it was a positive meeting. The president of the parliament, the prime minister, and the president, and all of the different forces have been present in this meeting, with exception of the former prime minister, that ever since he was ousted, he has been the target of many aggressions on behalf of this bloc and on behalf of a leader in the north, and all of the rest have practically assisted. The meeting was held in a positive environment, as well as the final statement. The president considered that this plan that is proposed has come along with some assistance of the International Monetary Fund, because this is an inherited crisis, and that it is required to continue all of the efforts. This was said by the Prime Minister Hassan Yap, who said that it's very easy to say that all of this darkness is bad, but it would be much better to turn on a light, and that they're making a lot of efforts to try to come out of this crisis. The reality of the country is very strong, and the opportunity to remedy this situation cannot wait. This, in general, is what we can say. This in terms of the meeting. Thank you, Wafika. Let's talk to Luis Agüero. Luis, we see the situation in Lebanon is apparently very far from finding a solution. What do you say about this? Greetings, Ray. Well, we must recall that Lebanon is a former French colony, and they have a blockade on behalf of the United States and Israel, both financial and commercial. This has gone on for many years. Another aspect to consider is that 90% of the population depend from the money that comes from abroad. Currently, this money is not being given to the people because the banks are taking advantage of the situation, and they prefer to give the money in currency, in local currency. There are also that is like almost $5 billion that have left the country that were just money that was passing by. This situation has gotten even worse. And let's not forget that there's aggression on behalf of Israel and the United States because they're the ones who are financing this opposition. So what they want to do is to throw out the government. And what they want is a government that will serve the interests of Israel and the United States. We are evaluating the situation in terms of the fact that there is an economic reality that is very strong and a crisis with it. But we shall not forget what has caused all of this. With a financial blockade and of services, it is impossible to try to survive. So now we're asking for a loan of the International Monetary Fund. And of course, United States and Israel are probably trying to take all of the debt of Lebanon and therefore make things even worse. Wafika, about this loan that has been requested to the International Monetary Fund, let's say that it's part of these rescue measures that has been proposed by the government and that has been discussed in the Lebanese parliament. But I want to ask you, what is the plan about? Well, maybe I could answer or comment a little bit about what my colleague has said. In any case, I would like to say that the plan is a financial recovery over 5 years because our crisis is of many parts. It's monetary, social, economic, financial, which has no precedence. I could give you some numbers to give you an idea. There is a recession of approximately 13%. There is an inflation of over 50%. There is a deterioration of the change, of the dollar exchange. There is a paralysis of the banking system. This banking system is what hurts the most of this economic crisis that the country is living, because the authority that the Central Bank of Lebanon has is far stronger than any other political authority or non-political. And these financial policies that led this country for over 30 years and through all of these governments, and especially since the Hariri son and Hariri father has been corroborated. So the banking in Lebanon, apart from some help, there's an increase in the numbers of poverty. The unemployment is in over 35%. There is a large deficit. And these are very demure numbers because the official numbers are never so true. I think they're higher. There's a high fiscal deficit. And in true, what happens is that it has 9 pillars. And above all, they try to increase the support First of all, this government is trying to balance the international policies and to put some dignity in the politics. So let's not forget that the government has been called the government of Hezbollah, of the resistance. This was called by the United States. But this is not true, because just because the president respects the resistance, and they think he thinks that it's their own right to resist. So let's not forget that Israel has taken over Palestine, and it's enough to consider that the government of Hezbollah, that is very allies to the United States, did not form of this government because they're not interested. And they have left the country in a terrible crisis up until the former prime minister was up to the task. They consider that they are able to get $10 billion on behalf of the International Monetary Fund. And when the IMF approves, because there are several conditions that they're supposed to accept. Of course, none of these conditions can go against the sovereignty, the integrity of the people and the country. But this is an integration because up until now, we have not seen that the International Monetary Fund has any ethics. So I don't know how the country has been able to bring him back. In any case, that's what they are striving for. So this would open up for donor countries to help out Lebanon. Because generally, when the countries see that the governments have reached an agreement, what they do is they just step back. And let's not forget that Lebanon will receive $11 billion. I can assure that this public debt which Lebanon has, this was in 2019. Apparently to the plan, they say that it's going to drop until 99% in 2024. Why? Because this government has decided, in a positive reaction, that the banks here are just giving credits to the government and to the people, and they're charging too much dollar in return. So the government is going to make a decision, and let's say it's going to be a political decision as a country. So we are not going to pay these interests to the bank, and that the banks have to participate in the solution. The prime minister said, he said, I have not come to press forward a revolution. Don't believe that I have come to make a revolution. I just come to save a country. So I think there is some contradiction of paying the debt and with what the people of the street say. Well, you're asking me about the people, right? All of those people who take to the streets to protest. First of all, to the presence of the banking company. Okay, yes, I want to explain this. The government said that they're not here to make a revolution or to assault a country. All of these marches are prior to this government. But when there is a person who is hungry, they don't care who is in the government. They just need somebody to save them off for that day. I need medical attention, I need education. Here, a poor person cannot be attended in a hospital if they don't have money. Likewise, education. Now, with the payment of the streets, and when it's heard that there is a monetary fund, and that we have all the examples possible of the countries who had decided to go through with the International Monetary Fund. And we have many people who are scared, and I think they're right. They feel scared because they need more guarantee. The plan must have more guarantee, more tranquility. And so this is what I heard in this meeting, that this document is not a sacred book. We are present to all of the critiques, and we will accept any suggestion because this plan is not going to be implemented yet. It has a constitutional process which is long because it has to go to the parliament. Then there has to be some approvals of how to implement this law. But I think the most outstanding and the most dangerous is an article that I just saw about the former ambassador here in Ecuador. And what he says is that there has to be a lot of proofs to show that this government of Hezbollah and the help or the assistance of the monetary fund will not have any repercussions for the benefit of Hezbollah. Nevertheless, yesterday, the Prime Minister called for a meeting among the diplomats that are living in Lebanon. And what he did was to start see what Lebanon is going to do and how she can help. And the American ambassadors also has a voice in this. And likewise, other Western ambassadors. This happens throughout our countries. The thing is, that this government is confronting a situation that has no previous information, and what they have is an economic crisis. And at the same time, the West, and this is the US and Israel, they are carrying out an awful war. But what we can see is that they're going to be mixed up in the streets. These are people who protest because of the economic situation, and there are others who are just trying to create chaos and create more difficulties to the government. The government is in a very narrow tunnel, and the things seem, from what we've seen, is that apparently things are not going to get better. But we must recognize that under the circumstances and bearing all of the weight that they're bringing from the years of corruption, let's not forget that there are $50 billion in corruption just of one company, which is the electricity company. So all the time we are demanding the government to solve things. However, I sincerely think we should not demand much more of what is reality. It's important to be able to demand what is necessary. And this country has saved the government politically for many years. Well, I would like to say that take the measures from the middle so we won't lose everything. This is a very hard crisis. harsh crisis, a very complex panorama. Thank you very much, Wafika. And as likewise with our other guest, thank you for participating in our critical moves. Let's go to our pause. Let's not forget also that we have a question of the day. Let's see what it's about. The protests are beginning once again. The government imposed an economic rescue plan that have many hard decisions. The IMF is willing to help. What do you think is coming up? Let's expect. When we come back, we have another guest that is a connoisseur of this reality, but also of international politics.
Follow our latest updates concerning the novel coronavirus by checking our special content in our website, where you will be able to get the most reliable details and numbers for each continent, available from your mobile device or desktop. Telesur, connecting the Global South.
Due to the historical location, Lebanon is a key country in the Middle East. Let's see what is the role of this country. The gas reserves located in the maritime area that is a border with Israel is now the new front of confrontations, according to maps recognized by the United Nations. 850 square kilometers belong to this country, recognized by international law, located under 1,000 meters below sea level. There are gas reserves in the Lebanese country, and they have one of the biggest oil of the gas reserves in the world. Although it's only threats, the tensions between the United States and Tel Aviv could be unleashed at any time. Analysts agree that it might be not so possible, but there might be a conflict. And of course, what they want to do is to allow the Lebanese people to defend their sovereignty. With the tensions to Israel, we also have the fight with the United States that has imposed their sanctions to Hezbollah. To this campaign, there has been some support from the European Union. I said it before. Let's speak with another person who's a connoisseur of the personal matters. Let's invite Isabel Francis. She's an expert in Middle Eastern affairs. How are you, doctor? So let's speak about this thing from the external and the internal point of view. Where do you think we should start? Well, I think, our friend Wafi has spoken a lot about the military points. There are still some points that I think we should deal with, and especially on the exterior policy and this crisis of Lebanon. So let's start by the inside house. Well, I do not have the same optics of the internal crisis. It is true that there has been a long history, ever since 1992, that has hit Lebanon after the refoundation of a state that was based on a policy of importation and subsidies, and they panned too much of the exportation. So it was more promoted while this country that can receive tourism And this is a conglomerate in the area. And in the midst, the policies have tried to isolate Lebanon from the influence, from all of the violence in Lebanon. This does not mean that Lebanon is not affected by transcendental topics in terms of the Lebanese identification. And yes, let's not forget that they support the Palestinians, and they confront a hegemonic plan of the United States, which is centered in dividing. And just every day, the Palestinian cause is going stronger, and the border also with the extension plan of Israel. And of course, the coastal areas are very important because it has gas and oil. So this, how much to export and extract, would divide entirely on the United States. And what is the benefit of Israel in the zone? And let's not forget that there are also internal forces that clash. And this and what they're trying to see is the identity of Lebanon. And in the midst of this conglomerate, you said that the internal situation is a bit hard, because Wafika herself was speaking of this crisis, that she called it as inherited. She spoke of a recession that goes to 13%, inflation of 50%, a banking system that is paralyzed, which is due to the geopolitical importance of the banking system in this country. Well, what we're speaking about is that the central point is the Central Bank of Lebanon, which is isolated. Previously, I was making my analysis by comparing our Venezuelan constitution to those. The four elements that are needed to remove a central bank has to do with 4 points, as if it was the president of the republic. And this speaks of how important the central bank is in Lebanon. So the autonomous force to direct the macroeconomic measures of Lebanon, and both monetary and economic. This is in the hands of one person who is a public servant. But of course, they have an autonomy of decisions in this case. So there is the central point. Their politics, which has taken the country to this breakage. In terms of the stability of the currency. And we also see that is surprising. It's the bank system that charged, and they bought some euro bonds from the central bank that are in the hands of private holders. So these private holders who go to the charter of these funds, 80% belong to the New York Bank of the United States. So this means that economically, these people depend on the United States. On one side, we have the internal policy that was directed. Let's not forget that there was many presidents after another. So what they want, this hindered the productivity of this country, and now it depends over 90% on everybody else's importation. So we're speaking of an exit, a huge exit of foreign of foreign money, and ever since, everything that is getting a loan, it would be used to subsidize, but not to make any new plans. That is what took them to bankruptcy. And let's not forget that we have to not only speak of the energy system. For example, the electric system has taken of over half of the expenditure of the foreign debt. And it has led them to say that they have 15 minutes within this power with a president that represents this office who is responsible. So this point specifically that has bled all of the country because there have been no actions particularly. So what we can say is that there's a shadow of corruption. Of course, we have allies, and the president who's an ally of the resistance and an ally of Israel. And here we can help him. Now, let's not forget that the Germans have had a solution for the electricity in Lebanon, but it has not gone through. Now, let's speak about the president, Hassan Diab, who is not going to make a revolution. They just want to use a new law. And the question is, why don't we begin from home? The drastic situation is always said that it has to be that we have to continue responsibly, that the International Monetary Fund has not taken drastic measures and opened much more credibility internationally with a national project about the electric system plan. So that crisis has been inherited for many years. And the current government is also responsible. So this is where we're going. So Hassan Diab is the leader of Hezbollah has just spoken about it and has said, we are going to give all of the support to one of the sectors, this new cabinet, to be able to come up with a solution to solve this terrible problem in which Lebanon is in. Anyway, we ask ourselves what the enemies have not been able to acquire.
Tenemos los casos de Brasil, son 4 casos. Una niña de 7 años de edad que vive en el municipio Simón Bolívar, en Barcelona, del estado Anzoátegui, que ingresó por el...
We have confronted the oil crisis, and with all of the context we are seeing, they have not been able to touch the monetary fund. Why? With all of the measures they could have, and the world is going to the Asian world so they can help them, or interject money so they can help the economic. Why are they going the other way? Why are they going to implement the monetary fund theory? Who signed this alliance? Well, the severity that a prime minister is going to come and sign and then call on the political conglomerate to then say, what's your opinion? What opinion can you have with the International Monetary Fund? You can't do that. Of course, this is going to fall on the weakest part of society. There are going to be more restrictions. There's going to be less foreign investment. Probably salaries are going to go down, and they're going to suffocate them. the leader of the resistance and the conglomerate that support them are probably going to revise it, but it's going to be useless because the IMF will not bend their measures. It's unilateral. You cannot negotiate with them. Ray, I don't know if I'm just jumping all around, but if we can only obtain $900 million because we're part of that fund, if only exploring one oil field gives us a dividend of $30 billion, but they don't let us get money from the oil, but they do let us get a loan from the IMF. This is suspicious. The president of the central bank has in custody the gold that supports our currency. So our reserves are there. What are we going to do? Strangle Hezbollah? We're going to strangle the Lebanese government, put them in misery and hunger? You are going to go through hunger if you don't follow the impositions of the United States. And what are the impositions? To go along with their position in the agreement of the century in Palestine, other interests that the United States has in the international aspect. So if you don't follow the U.S. lines, we will take your gold. So here we're not speaking of France or Switzerland, where somebody has to find an economic recipe that is simple. No, it's very complex. Here there are many interests, international, economic, both internally, because from inside, if this cabinet that put to death the economic of Lebanon, why are we going to touch the International Monetary Fund to keep face? From my point of view, I think that this is a very dangerous condition, which attempts every time more against the sovereignty of our government. Now we have Hezbollah that has to do with the wars with Syria. Of course, it is an internal political role that has gone in the negotiations. So they had a war in 2006, now with Syria, China, Syria, and they've always won. And why are they going to step back to be subject of the U.S.? There is something very interesting that Wafi did reflect. Those were the declarations of the U.S. diplomat when he said, well, there are many attempts, but of course this might be to benefit Hezbollah, because Hezbollah has become the only group that has a credibility in the resistance. So what they want to do is bring the parts together. And they have the decision to confront corruption. So this would be like trying to stop this government that in a way that has all of the support of Hezbollah and trying to be afloat of everything that's going on in Lebanon. So to say that this can benefit somebody on the other hand, we see a resistance that will not allow, when I speak of resistance, I say there's a conglomerate that comes from the presidency, etc., and to say that we will not allow the usurpation of our oil reserves in the Lebanese coasts, and on the other hand, the negotiation of the century that Kushner has requested the Lebanese country, saying, if you accept all of the conditions of the Sinai Agreement to exchange Gaza and the West Bank
anexarla al Estado sionista, expansionista de Israel, colonial de Israel, entonces
so
vienes a decir,
then you're going to say, so Kushner has said, we can liberate Lebanon from these $100 billion, but you have to vote in with us. So as you can see, it's not so easy. But internally, internally and external politics have lots to do. They are not in. Yet there is a U.S. blockade to the Lebanese banks, inflation, poverty. They are now living the same terminology of the International Monetary Fund, exactly the same. But it's going to drown them even more with more decisions that are going to go on the Lebanese people. So they're going to have hunger, even worse than in 1914. This is surprising, Doctor. Thank you very much. We want to speak some other occasion much more about this. Let's go to our conclusions. As we can see, there's a complex panorama in Lebanon. This is going to be this is a scenario to have an intervention on the U.S. On one hand, the bank. On the other hand, the government that pacts with the IMF, and the diverse nationalist and religious composition of this country. So to which there is also the position of some foreign neighbors to try to help out that is apparently social economic from the beginning. This is what Hezbollah has said. What is its risk? The sovereignty of Lebanon. This is why we will continue investigating. For today, this is all. Thank you very much.